This House is now in session. Prior to the suspension on yesterday's date, this Honourable Chamber had resolved itself into a standing Finance Committee to debate the Appropriation Bill and Estimates 2019. To that we now revert.
Morning.
Morning, sorry.
How are you?
Good, good.
I wonder if everybody that had it for yesterday want to speak. I say I wonder if everybody that did not speak wanted to speak. Ralph spoke. Who Ralph? No, he didn't speak. I still have him here.
You can't
It's Adrian. I can, yeah. It's for fairness.
You can continue from all.
Where he was. Sure.
Sitting on the standing finance committee.
Yeah. Let me wait till the sit last and you tell me so. The sitting of the Standing Finance Committee has resumed. Please let me remind members that you have 3 minutes to ask your questions with 2 extra questions for supplementary, 2 related questions, and the answer should be over a 5-minute period. Please can the permanent secretaries and technical officers introduce themselves again as they speak. You may begin. We will start with the Honourable Member for St. Michael, Christchurch West Central. What happened? Get him in there. Lost it. I'm gonna put him in higher.
Just getting myself started. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to say a pleasant good morning to all in this August chamber. Certainly my question relates, and is an ironic question as I speak, because it relates to the debacle that is taking place, certainly at the mangrove landfill, and I'm sure the member of Parliament for St. Thomas would appreciate the question, because we have a situation right now where tires are burning, causing an environmental hazard as it relates to the air, our water course certainly, and our soil. I'm asking the minister and certainly the technical team, how can we use tire and the tire, we call the chunks, the tire chunks, and obviously the rubber from the tires to be part of our asphalt production. How can we use it to help in the patching of roads? And I'm going to say on behalf of certainly the residents of Christchurch West Central, there are a lot of potholes. And they have told me to tell this August chamber and certainly minister that we have a lot of rubber at the mangrove pond landfill, and certainly we can use it if we examine a way of incorporating it into the asphalt, so that the residents in Christchurch West Central certainly can now drive on the left-hand side of the road and not what is left of the road. And I know that the Member of Parliament, certainly of Christchurch West, and the Minister I know you alluded to the fact that there is a problem with the buses, and he said that the issue was with Kirk, but I am saying, I didn't know the member of parliament for St. Michael South would agree that the Kirk that in St. Michael South bring good tidings of great joy to the people of St. Michael South. And I am saying that how could we utilize that rubber that is burning into our asphalt mix? And certainly, when you look at other countries that are using that rubber for mudguards and mats for buses, how can we, as a government, utilize that which is seen as waste, that is a harmful waste, especially in our road patching exercise, and certainly for our buses as it relates to mudguards and mats? And I think that would allow us to be efficient in terms of our spend, because when you're talking about circular Barbados, we have to utilize everything that is available to us. And we have rubber in abundance. There are a lot of old tires in this country.
Honourable member, we got the question. Could you allow the team to answer, please?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
I was just finishing up.
We got it.
Okay, thanks.
First, let me thank the minister for his question. Let me say that early on in our tenure, I think it was within the first month, we did meet with a particular contractor who had an interest in what we call it, I think pebbleizing is what they call it, pebbleizing the tires and then using it in the asphalt mix. The problem came, we didn't pursue it because he said that basically the amount of tires that we produce, I think it's 120,000 per year, would not be sufficient to be able to make it economically viable. And in addition, he would have to import tires from other jurisdictions to make it economically viable. And on top of that, you would have to add an additional $20 to $25, I believe he said it was, for the disposal of the tires. So we did not pursue it because the requirement to import the tires to make it economically viable, and then on top of it, the additional cost. If the will of this Parliament is that we should look at it again and pursue it with a view to having tires pebbleized and chipped, it's something that I believe we can take to the ministry. We will certainly look at it, but it did not look as attractive as it sounds from the minister at this present time, simply because the economics did not work as it stood, and because the quantum of tires that we produce did not make it economically viable based on the cost of the machinery, and then to be able to put the pebbleized rubber into the roads.
Any follow-up, honourable member?
I just want to say that in other jurisdictions, certainly...
Follow-up question?
It's a follow-up question. In other jurisdictions, it has worked. My follow-up question is that with its water resistance, with the asphalt from tire with its water resistance, how about us looking at it, doing it at a small scale for even the filling of the landfill or those types of projects, rather than looking at doing it for bigger projects? Let us start, because it is a nuisance, it's an environmental nuisance that we have. So I'm saying that even if you don't look at it from a wide perspective and a macro picture, let us see how we can utilize those tires, because they are there in abundance.
Just to follow up, the smallest machine that is what he was looking at, and we still could not get the economics to work. I think, although we feel that we're big, we're one of the smaller jurisdictions, and everybody says we try to punch above our weight class, but we also have to make the economics work. And at that time, the persons purporting it said that for it to work, we then have to add the price. And it didn't seem to work properly that way. But we're prepared to look at it again. Prices change, machine prices come down, and it's something that we're prepared to look at again.
Thank you. Honourable member for the city.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, let me say how appreciative I am of the good news that I got yesterday from the ministry in relation to the mitigation of the flooding situation at Murphy pasture. And I say that not only because it happens to be in the constituency that I represent, but more importantly because I believe that it is important that when we are dealing with communities that are socially, economically challenged in this country, that we do things to make them understand and to feel the members of those communities that they are not being neglected by the system or isolated from the very system which is designed to help them. And so I'm grateful for that. My question has to do with the flooding situation at the London-Bourne Towers pond site in that area. And let me state up front that I recognize and I appreciate the fact that the ministry does not have all the resources to deal with all issues at the same time. I appreciate that. But my question is, do you have any plans for this year or in the near future to deal with the flooding situation at Pondside, London-Bourne Towers?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. As you know, we were there on site. In fact, it's very prominent in my memory with the lady having all her shoes out in the sun because everything had become so waterlogged in her unit. And it was very heartening. And it really brought it home how important it is to maintain the gutters and the culverts and all the drains and so on. I brought forward Mr. Jason Boyne, the Director of Drainage, and he will be able to update you as to what remedial work was done, and I know that remedial work was done, and what we expect to happen in the future. Mr. Boyne.
In terms of the work that was done at London-Bourne Towers after the storm event, we had started cleaning some of the drains in the area itself. There's also a large drain which crosses the what do you call it, Bay Street. It is a significantly large drain, and it is taking significant time to complete. It was completely filled with debris, and it has taken a while to, in honesty, get cleaned. Also, we've also noticed what we want to pursue also is to increase some of by Lobster Alive at that end, to put in some more areas for water to escape from that drain, and then to clear the sand a bit more frequently so as to allow the water, when there is a storm event, to allow the water to escape to the sea as well.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The question I have, relates to sub-program 0495 Tenantry Roads. The question relates to sub-program 0495 Tenantry Roads under program 510 Road Network Services. I'm noticing that in the estimates for 2019-2020, there's a sum, well, let me give you the total. The total for this sub-program is $439,000. The previous year was $82,000, and it seems to relate to, as the subheading, the sub-program title says, Tenantry Roads. I want to ask the ministers or the technocrats, is this indicative that there will be a substantial increase in the attention paid to resurfacing, rehabilitating tenantry roads across the country? I'm particularly interested because there are some roads like what we call Centipede Alley in St. Peter, roads in Young Ground and Fort Hill, Lonesome Hill, that are in various states of significant disrepair and would need, but they do need some urgent attention. And I'm wondering if the increase in the allocation, proposed allocation for 2019-20 will allow the residents in those areas to see some improvement in the access to their homes.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Peter. And let me begin by saying that I am very familiar with a number of the roles that you have called, being some person from a rural community and representing a rural constituency myself. The road network, not just the road network, the tenantry road situation in Barbados and in a number of areas which we would have visited in our tenure, as we would have done some tours with some members of parliament, showed us that there has been great deterioration in these roads because nothing apparently was done during the last and under the last administration. Now, persons living in tenantries need to, or have a right, have a right to be able to have proper access to their homes and so on. And yes, the ministry, we have what we call a milling and paving program, which would pay attention to these tenantry roads. You have a situation where all across in areas of St. George, in areas of St. Thomas, in areas of St. Lucy, in areas of St. Peter and St. John, the situation repeats itself each time. And in the ministry, we definitely have to take the position where we must bring relief to a number of these communities. We cannot do all at the same time, but the ministry usually goes out and we do an assessment based on what residents may call us about as well, because residents have a right. There are members of parliament who speak to it, but the residents themselves call and they see you and they say, well, look, there's this position in my community and so on. And these people are deserving of having their roads fixed. And certainly I see the chairman of committees looking at me. Yes, St. Philip North as well. We would have done a tour with the member of parliament, and we plan to vigorously deal with this situation. As we said yesterday, once we have the requisite equipment, we will be having this a very vigorous approach to remedying this situation as soon as is possible. And trust that answer your question.
By way of follow-up, Madam Chair, to the ministers, I am pretty sure that the funds I see allocated, even though significantly higher than the funds for the previous year, are not sufficient to bring relief to all. And I'm wondering if there is any prioritizing of roads. I know there are many bad roads. I'm not asking the question to necessarily put you on a spot, but I would just want that there's a commitment that some priorities in various parishes or constituencies be looked at, and I'm asking if that is going to be your intention. I'm asking it because I don't want that you fix all in St. Philip or St. Michael and leave out St. Lucy and St. Peter.
I like how you began, honorable member. Love it.
That's the reason why I'm asking the question. I know we can't do everything. How are you prioritizing?
It is a very valid question. The technical team, once the information is received with relation to these roads, the technical team would do a visit, and they're very familiar. The persons working at the depots and our technicians, the technicians at the depots are very familiar with the situation across the country in their particular areas. You have someone responsible for the south, there's some in the north, and so on. So we would have definitely to prioritize. It is not. This is just the first year, and over the next 2-3 years or so, we will be working on it, but priority will be given to the worst roads and coming down. So it will be a case of prioritizing, as opposed to we don't operate in this ministry in terms of favoritism where a minister or a member of parliament, we have and we recognize as a government that this is about Barbados and not any one particular area or so, especially at this point in time when the people of Barbados went out in their numbers and gave us all the seats. So everybody has to get a piece of the cake.
Thank you. Honorable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, and all of the members of Parliament and the distinguished members of staff from the Ministry of Public Works and Transport, which is under the new name now. But I want to say how happy I am that these honourable members are delivering the information which makes sense not only to us in here, but the public at large. Is extremely happy to be able to get all of this basic information that will help them through. My first query, ma'am, is to do with a previous administration up to 2008 had ordered and had ensured that each depot in the parishes, wherever they are located, received basic equipment, patching truck, bobcat, and the works, to ensure that there was efficiency and that not all of us had to rely on central government or the location at the point to be able to have access. I know, and I stand to be corrected, I saw a $4.6 million for the vehicle and equipment workshop. And I want to find out, sir, what plans there are to ensure that accountability and efficiency takes place, because few depots, if any at all, now have any equipment, even fork and hoe and shovel and so on. They are lacking, because I can speak for the Bagatelle depot, that men are on the job at Ashford Hill and so, absolutely little or no equipment for the last 5 months trying to do a little curb. And I'm saying the public is criticizing them, but if they don't have the equipment, if they don't have the resources, they cannot complete the job. And so I want to know what efficiencies are being put in place to be able to ensure that there's high accountability for the taxpayers' money when it comes to the repairs. When we pass and we see the location in the Pine, there are too many pieces of equipment there and like trucks and so that are corroding. And I know that the Bobcat at Bagatelle went in 2 years ago to get pins for the bucket, and it stayed there for more than a year. I want for the accountability to happen so that Barbadians can enjoy and praise the Ministry of Works and Maintenance for the excellent job that it tries to do. But of course, if the efficiencies are not there, I do not want another chance haul situation on an Easter morning when Christ rose for a bobcat to be missing from St. Lucie, and to this day in small Barbados it cannot be found. We are not happy as a people when matters of that nature are pursued. And I'm not saying that it happened under your time or whoever the minister is or whoever the managers are. I believe that the accountability and the efficiencies must take place, and please let the public know. I am suffering in the parish of St. Thomas as a result. I am thankful for the little efforts that are being made, but I believe that better can be done with the hard-earned money of Barbadians, especially in this harsh economic time. And I would wish to find out what plans are in place to be able to mitigate the kind of madness that we see and witness every day as we pass by the Pine, and so on and so forth. I'll give up, sir.
Thank you very much, Minister. I heard about 3 questions in there in one. I don't know if we'll get a chance to address. That sounded like 3.
I only heard one.
You heard one. All right, well, I will address one part of the one, which has to do with the equipment that is there, and I'll ask the Permanent Secretary to address about the other equipment respect to the depots. But it's a big bugbear for me, and I'm talking about the equipment that is parked right at the front of the ministry. I'll just give you a little history of what happens. So when we board equipment, we send it to the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance then brings in an auctioneer, and they auction the equipment. And people turn up at the auction and say, yes, I can pay $500, and yes, I can pay $1,000, and so on and so forth, and the material, the stuff is auctioned. And then we expect to get payment so they can move it. Well, guess what? No payment came, so therefore they couldn't move it. So it meant that what we have to do now, we have to petition the Ministry of Finance and go back to auction to start the process all over again. And this is why we have that big set of equipment there. That's the first problem. The second problem is things that do not sell, then we have to dispose of, and we no longer have a place to dispose of those heavy pieces of equipment. And we're constantly looking, and the government itself actually needs to find a place for heavy equipment for the whole country, and for that equipment to be properly disposed of. So that is an issue that we're working on, because I agree, we definitely have to get that stuff moved. We're going back to auction for a lot of the material, that the stuff that you said is rusting is there, and it's past rusting because some of it actually is collecting mosquitoes, and we have to be emptying out water, rainwater that's collecting in them all the time, and assessing any collection of water that's in them. So it is a problem, and we're working on it, but we need to get that equipment moved, and my technical team will tell you that I'm always at them, that we need to expedite the process and get the equipment moved. But I'll let the Permanent Secretary answer with respect to the equipment at each depot.
Good morning, Madam Chair, honorable members. Mark Cummins, Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Transport, Works and Maintenance. And at this time, honorable member, Minister Ford, we are having significant challenges with availability of equipment, but that is premised on a number of factors. Yesterday, Minister Duguid made reference to the significant challenge the ministry has been experiencing, to my knowledge, for the last 2 years, where we've had a chronic shortage of mechanics. At this point in time, we have 7 mechanics in place. We have vacancies for 17 mechanics. We have had consultations with the Personnel Administration Division, now the Ministry of Public Service. Only last night, I sent a text to a senior official in that ministry asking for an urgent meeting, because without mechanics, we cannot adequately repair the equipment when it is broken, and it is mechanized equipment, and it will be broken from time to time. But we are also unable, with the shortage of mechanics, to put a proper preventive maintenance program in place. But what we have done, we have met within the last 3 weeks with the Barbados Vocational Training Board to resume our apprenticeship scheme. We are hoping within the next month, certainly the 6 weeks, to have 12 apprentices on board. As of yesterday, we entered into a contract for services with 5 mechanics, and I'm told that I was actually shocked when I was told this morning that yesterday, one of those mechanics who came on yesterday in a contract for services was able to replace a clutch, pressure plate, and everything related to a truck, so that the truck is driving as we speak today. So therefore, if we can get those mechanics in place, we will certainly be able to get the equipment on the road, into the depots, and provide our colleagues who work in the depots with the necessary equipment to carry out the work. Also, we have been given $15 million, first of a tranche of $5 million and then a tranche of $10 million to purchase equipment. I'll speak first to the $5 million. We have been able to source some equipment already. We have sourced skid steers, which persons commonly refer to as bobcats. We are very shortly, we should have some 2 10-meter dump trucks and 1 6-meter dump truck delivered. And I think I must share this, because I could not believe the length of time it takes to have a truck painted. And when I went into the details, when that truck comes to Barbados, that truck then has to be stripped in order to be painted in the colors of the Ministry of Transport and Work. So we have had some, I would refer to it as unforeseen delays, but I certainly think that by the middle of March we will have those 3 trucks up and running. We have made place orders for a number of patching trucks. We also will have skid steers, 8 skid steers on rubber wheels, 6 skid steers on tracks, because there's some water courses where we must have the equipment on tracks. But the larger pieces of equipment, like the pothole patcher and other specialized equipment, The delivery time for those pieces of equipment will range based on the submission made by the tenders up to 36 weeks. And that is because those pieces of equipment are not necessarily sitting in anyone's garage, certainly not in Barbados. Those pieces of equipment are not sitting, so when the order is made, then things are put in place. So with the limited number of mechanics that we have, we've been able to get some pieces back out. We have some excavators. Minister Bostic just made reference yesterday to Murphy's Pasture. We expect to have some excavation commencing there very shortly. We have also ordered backhoes. We have ordered D6. So it is certainly my wish, hope, intention that if this situation arises again next year where we are here, we will certainly be able to not state that the equipment is on the way, that the equipment is here. We have the mechanics in place. We have a preventive maintenance program. We have a preventive maintenance program in place. And with your permission, Madam Chair, before I close, the reason we went back to the apprenticeship program with the Barbados Vocational Training Board is for the significant reason that we want to get our young people involved in practical things. Mechanics is a very highly specialized area. And when you see the pieces of equipment now with the autotronics involved, then that brings a special skill to the table. And I am hopeful, because I have no control over the Personnel Administration Division, but I am hopeful that if we can get at least 10 of those 17 mechanics to add to the 7 that we have, plus the 12 apprentices, and with the skill of the senior mechanical engineer and the workshop manager, we should be in a position where we have the majority, at least 85 to 90% of our equipment up and running on a daily basis so that we can service the depots. And I would like to say quickly, we've also restructured the depot. We've also restructured the depot system, whereby not only will we have asked them to, when they're ordering materials, as opposed to ordering 30 cubic meters of this and 20 cubic meters of that, order 75 or 80 so that you have supplies for 3 or 4 months, and that you don't have to be constantly running to the ministry with a requisition or running out of materials. But the challenge is security, because we have had a history of things leaving the depot, and that's another challenge that we are faced with, but we will intend to wrestle with that.
Thank you. Any follow-up? Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Any other question?
Let me compliment the Honourable Member for Christchurch West for the leadership he has brought to this ministry, the gusto he has exuded, ably assisted, I'm sure, by my honourable young friend from St. Lucie. And thank the public servants for being here to assist with this exercise. I have a question for the minister. You are dropping, or you are receiving, a significantly reduced level of subsidy to the Transport Board this year as opposed to last year, moving from last year's position of $23 million to this year's position of $15 million. The question to a layperson like myself, does that imply layoffs? And if so, how many? Or does it imply increased bus fares? If so, by how much? And is there any truth to the view held by many out there that you're taking the bus fare level to $5?
So again, I think I heard a few questions there.
He has the right to, though.
Pardon?
He's right, well within his right to do it that
Okay,
way.
fine, and I will try to answer them. First, let me say that the Transport Board spends per month on average between $6 and $7 million per month. The Transport Board takes in, on average, $1.5 million. So that means that the Transport Board requires a subsidy from the people, the taxpayers of Barbados, in the vicinity of $5 million per month, or $60 million per year. That is not sustainable, could not be sustainable. So it is clear that we have to restructure the Transport Board. With respect to layoffs, that is still, I wouldn't want to prejudice our discussions with the unions, because discussions are still going on with the unions at this time. But needless to say, there is no way that we could go forward with the Transport Board as it is. As you know, under the BERT program, that is under the Phase 3 part, that the Transport Board must be restructured. With respect to the change in bus fares, I said yesterday that we have not made a final assessment as to where bus fares will go. We don't know if it will be an increase of $1.50 or if it will be an increase of $2, but we are aware of the impact it will have on the traveling public of Barbados. We are aware of the impact it will have on people, but you understand that prices to maintain not only Transport Board but also public service vehicles, prices have gone up, but the cost of a fare has not gone up. In addition, we look to make technology benefits in terms of using a cashless system, in terms of using better technology and better processes so that we can minimize waste where necessary. So the Transport Board actually has put forward a significant program which has not gone through Cabinet as yet, but it is before us. And they have made recommendations, and the Cabinet is going through that. And once approved by Cabinet, they will put that into practice. So we are very well aware of the issues at the Transport Board. We're very well aware, and we have a program to fix it. Head and most important in that program is the tender to get the new buses, because at the end of the day, we have to be able to transport the public. Part of the problem of not having the quantum for the fares is because if your bus fleet is down from 150, 160 where it should be, and it's down to 50 or 60 because of the difficulty of maintaining the old buses, then it means that your revenue is impacted significantly as well. And that is part of the problem. So we're aware of the difficulties, and we're working assiduously. The board has been working very hard, and I want to commend the chairman and all the members of the board and all the members of the Transport Board for working very hard to grapple this problem to the ground. It is not an easy problem. It will not be an easy fix, but rest assured, we are working to fix the problem.
Thank you. Follow-up?
Ma'am, my honorable friend has implied without stating definitively, yes, bus fares will be going up. My honorable friend has said to us, I can't tell you how many people will be laid off because we are still talking to the unions. My honorable friend has told me we require a $60 million subsidy. We got 23 last year. We're only getting 15 this year, so I don't know where the argument is going. I'm left a little bit in the dark, unfortunately. I can only ask for further clarity.
Well, just to say that the restructuring program has to take place, and once we restructure the program, then we will see what we have left and work with it. You know, it's not unknown to come back for a supplementary. But that we have a certain target and a goal, and we're hoping to achieve that goal very quickly.
Yeah. Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for Christchurch South.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning, Minister, and ministers, I should say, and all of your members. I want to ask about the issue of flooding. I know it's not a very popular issue, not glamorous at all, but a lot of our people are suffering in quiet dignity, certainly in my constituency, and that is Christchurch South. And immediately I'm going to identify 3 areas in which flooding has been a problem repeatedly. As I said, I know this is not a glamorous topic. Minister, I certainly wish that I would be able to, in future, give notice of the areas that I'm going to ask about, because I don't see this as any exercise in ambush. So I hope that we can provide the answers to the question, since I'm mandated to do so by the people who live in Christchurch South. The first area is Goodland Gardens, and I'm glad that your office is nodding with approval. Surely he knows of Goodland Gardens. I don't know if the problem is related to the fact that you have to dig fairly deep before you get to rock, and therefore the water doesn't run off very quickly. Sometime last year, during the heavy rainfall, the water stayed at the western end, that street that runs at the western end of Goodland Gardens, for about 3-4 days. And people were marooned in their houses, and as I said, they did this in quiet dignity. There was no newspaper coverage, there was no television presence, I don't think. But the problem repeats itself over and over. The second area is that of Fairholme Gardens. And I want to compliment one of your officers who visited the area with me a Saturday. And I'm very impressed by that a public officer, among officers who are generally criticized unjustly, that he came to Fairholme Gardens with me a Saturday. May I call his name? Mr. Daisley. I think he's assigned to the Christchurch area. And he came there and spoke with us and expressed a view that Fairholme, for example, the problem there may be the rising tides. And that is an extremely difficult problem if one can resolve it, if it is at all possible to resolve it. But I do raise the issue, ministers, in relation to Fairholme Gardens. And that is near to the entrance, near to the South Coast Road. The third area, again, the residents there, they do it in quiet dignity, they get flooding. This is a small street off St. Lawrence Gap. I think it may be 2nd Avenue, I'm not too sure at this point. But Dover Gardens, again, they get the same problem. And I know this problem exists all across Barbados, but it is worthy to highlight it in one's constituency. And I want to highlight those 3 areas of severe drainage issues. And possibly there's an area in Carter's Gap, but I don't think that it is as severe as those 3 areas. So I want to attract the attention of the ministry to those 3 areas in Christchurch South, and not to ask for immediate solutions, but to get your assurance that these 3 areas will be looked at in future. I take you back to Goodland Gardens, for example.
I don't remember, you have a few seconds.
Yes, and to say to you that an attempt was made to resolve the issue, and they dug a large well, but I think that work may have been abandoned, and we would want some assurance that those 3 areas are being attended to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, member for Christchurch South. We have the director of the Drainage Division, Mr. Bowen. Obviously, drainage is a very technical thing. It needs not only that the wells are operational, that the culverts are operational, and there are lots involved, as you rightly said. With a coastal location, then you have the problem with tides, so therefore the well cannot be as deep because you have tidal water coming the other way. So there's all sorts of technical things, and I'll ask Mr. Bowen to address the matter.
In terms of the Goodland Gardens area, after the passage of Tropical Storm Kirk, we were aware that there was significant flooding in the area. We have started inspecting many of the wells in the area. Many of those wells have maintenance issues and require some cleaning and so forth. So we are going to commence doing a significantly more maintenance work in that area soon, because the flooding was not acceptable. So that we will look to address. The other areas which you had identified, many of them are essentially on the coastline, and the water table in those areas would be like probably a meter or so. So you really can't do a lot of stormwater well work. You're going to have to look at doing some other type of structures or so forth to try to alleviate those those flooding issues. But we definitely will look at these areas.
Just to add on a little bit with what Mr. Bowen said, is that we have about 3,000 wells in Barbados. And all of these wells need attention quite frequently. And we're now in the process of using GPS mapping to actually map the wells and have it on a whole computer system, something that was never done before, and I've asked the ministry to do this, to GPS map all of the wells so that we can actually see at a glance either first the island and then parish by parish. And on that GPS, we actually have when the well was last cleaned, when we expect to clean it again, what is the functioning of it, and everything. So everything can be picked up by technology by a glance. And that's something that was not done before, and we've undertaken that project as well, so that we can maintain the wells of Barbados appropriately, because at the end of the day, say for instance, somebody who knows where the wells are, and then that person retires, dies, whatever, is no longer available, then you have difficulty recognizing and remembering and knowing where all the wells are. But if we can digitally map every single well, which has never been done, and that's what we intend to do, then we will always have, and the ministry will always have knowledge of where those wells are and information about those wells going forward. Okay?
Supplementary?
Madam Chair, I don't know if you'll allow a follow-up question.
Once it's related?
Yes, I don't know if the flooding affects the bus service in that area, so permit me to ask about the bus service. Thank you very much.
Smart.
A lot of latitude there. A lot of latitude.
No, this is in St. Christopher, and I think they have had, I think the rainfalls in St. Christopher as well.
But the buses are covered, I'm fairly sure.
No, well, as a matter of fact, I am asked to report to you that there's a very strange service that St. Christopher gets. Thank you. The bus service in St. Christopher is very erratic, and they tell me that that service exists only for a few weeks when the elections are due.
Because of the flooding, don't forget.
Yes, it may be, well, the minister will tell us if that is because of the flooding or because of the elections. But I have been sent to report that that bus service is erratic. And as I said, I don't know if it is related to flooding or if it is related to the excitement generated by elections. They want me to ask you that. It is not existent now, you see.
Thank you very much for the member of Christchurch South and being your leader in Christchurch.
You are indeed.
Let me first say that Christchurch West doesn't seem to have a bus service at all. And it used to have a bus service years ago, and then that seemed to have abruptly stopped. But I have asked the acting general manager of the Transport Board, Ms. Felicia Sue, to come and give an account about that particular part of the bus service. But bear in mind, Christchurch South, I know, is served by a large contingent of PSVs, and they serve that area well. But it's just the extension, the end part, I guess, in St. Christopher, which is to the end part of the road, that is the problem. But I'll ask Ms. Sue to better give a report on that.
Older persons.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, who feel safer on the transport board buses.
It's important because we have to understand that the older persons, the old age pensioners especially, are the bigger users of the transport board service than anybody else, in terms as a group, and we appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Madam Chairman of Committees, honorable members, good morning. We understand the challenges the honorable member faced in Christchurch because of the issues with the scheduling, and it was referred to yesterday. We would have had our schedules for 150 buses. We have now completed the process of revising those schedules to accommodate the lesser service. So I can assure you that it will soon be publicized, and we will do a good public relations of ensuring and let you know when those buses will be available now to suit the buses we have until we get the new buses. So we apologize to all of you with the challenges, but we're working assiduously, and I take this opportunity to thank all the members of especially the drivers who face daily the challenges of the frustrations of persons for the good work they're doing. But I assure honorable members, now that we have revised our schedules, you should see some improvement in short order.
Thank you very much. Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone. The Ministry of Transport and Works has responsibility for a number of environmental situations that are very important to the well-being of Barbadians, the cleanliness of the area, etc. And I was very pleased to hear the EPS share about the fact that the vehicles that will be coming to help with the removal of brush and debris, etc., from around the place is going to soon be sorted out, because in St. James South, we have had situations where we've not been able to get certain areas cleaned, and the residents have been getting together and actually working on it as a community. But we do need help with the removal of the debris so that the environment would be clean. So I do want to thank you for getting the trucks and so on, so we'll be looking forward to working with you on it. The environmental matter that is of grave concern to thousands of Barbadians, and in particular the civil servants, is the issue of the environment in our government buildings. It is causing a grave issue to people's health in terms of allergies and the whole issue of maintenance of our government buildings is very important. And the reason why I raise it is because my heart leapt with joy when I looked at Head 80 and Subprogram 513 on the government building services. I saw there that in 2018-2019, you only had $5.5 million assigned to the maintenance of our government buildings. And I see with great happiness 13 million assigned to you for 2019-2020. I want to ask, what are the plans for the maintenance of the buildings? What is going to be done in terms of a more aggressive, more planned approach to preventive maintenance, rather than waiting until the civil servants become uncomfortable and then we are springing into action, and for the better care of the government properties altogether. That is of big concern to me and to civil servants, and would really appreciate to know what are the plans for this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Clearly, maintenance, you would recognize that it was only recently that maintenance was actually attached to the name of this ministry. So therefore, maintenance has become a big issue, and we have been paying quite a bit of attention to it, and I'll ask the Chief Technical Officer, Ms. Cheryl Bennett-Innes, to answer that question.
Thank you, Minister Chair, and thank you for the question, Minister. We have a building section at the Ministry of Transport Works and Maintenance. It's under the Deputy Chief Technical Officer for Projects. That maintenance department is responsible for some of government's buildings, not all of them. So these are the older buildings, actually, so government headquarters, Illawarra Court, Government House, those buildings. We share the responsibility of maintenance of government buildings with the Ministry of Housing and Lands. They have an officer there as well that is responsible for maintenance of a lot of the government properties. The increase was obviously because those buildings that I just mentioned are not getting any younger. They are therefore more serious things that are happening to those structures as time goes on. And therefore, we recognize that we, as Minister Duguid said, maintenance was not always at the forefront of our ministry's name and title, and therefore sometimes it was suppressed, I would say. Fortunately now, because it is part of our name, we are paying far more attention to it, and we are therefore now also allocating more resources, both financial and human resources, to the maintenance of those properties. Because there are older buildings, they are essentially, I would say, including actually our headquarters at Ministry of Transport and Works in the Pine, they are somewhat sick buildings. They were not originally designed, for instance, for air conditioning. They were designed to have an open window plan so that the fresh air would flow through. But because over the years we have grown accustomed to closing them and having the air conditioning systems in place, that causes its own problems. But the increased money is looking at making the proper arrangements so that air conditioning systems and other things like that that are modern be able to cope, to be properly placed in an older building. Let's put it that way. So yes, we will be paying far more attention to those structures. And as I said, there are only some of the government buildings that are under the purview of the Ministry of Transport, Works and Maintenance, but the large number of government properties are with the Ministry of Housing and Lands, and we do work closely with them, with our building section, and also sometimes we are required to bring in contractors, private contractors to assist us in that maintenance.
Sure, you must be doing it because I've heard it in every other section, unit, using more modern technology and approaches and so on. So in looking at the forward and preventive maintenance, I'm wondering if you've given thought to, for example, if you were refurbishing someplace, that you now use things that are not as produce allergies and the types of materials you use and so on. I would assume that you're doing that kind of research work to make sure that we get the healthiest environment for our staff to work in.
To respond to that one, I wear many hats. I am also the deputy chair at the Government Tenders Committee. And that committee typically deals with cleaning services for most of the government buildings and deal with the tenders that respond to the cleaning of government buildings. And we pay particular attention to the chemicals that the cleaning services are planning to use. We actually require that they submit a list of all the chemicals that will be used in their cleaning services. And that is reviewed by both the Tenders Committee and the procuring agency to make sure that we are not going to cause a problem with any of the cleaning agents that are being used.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East.
I heard with interest my friend from Christchurch South talking about the bus service to St. Christopher. And I would like to urge the Honourable Minister, when he's looking at the transport service generally, that we have a situation where a number of PSVs are not running their entire route. If the route is long, they're running the part of the route that has the most passengers and then turning around when convenient or when empty and going back. This is affecting areas like Chancery Lane. This is affecting areas like Ferry Valley. And it is actually not for the people. People need some sort of regular and dependable arrangement that they can plan their business so they can at least be guaranteed of a bus in the morning and a bus in the evening so they can get to town and get back or get to the doctor and do what they have to do. That is part one. Part two, I noticed under subhead 511, subprogram 511 for drainage services, you are getting a bit more money than what was actually spent last year. Now we know what happened last year with flooding. And I would like to know, when is the actual debushing program going to restart? Because not to let the cat out of the bag, but we have had a number of discussions where I have begged for some debushing on a particular road where I was getting many complaints. And I appreciate the fact that we had to focus on the main transit areas and we had to focus on the highway. And for example, even out by Waterford Bottom, you're seeing tremendous debushing out there. But when is normal service going to resume in residential areas? Because we're getting a lot of complaints about that. It's not just a drainage issue, it is also a personal safety issue. So I would just like some ideas so I can give my constituents some guidance, but I want to highlight just generally that PSV's operators must run the entire route to which they're assigned, otherwise it causes problems for everybody.
Thank you, Minister. So 2 questions, and the first part, I will have the Chairman of the Transport Authority, Mr. Ian Eswick, to deal with that, and then the second part, I'll have the Deputy Chief Technical Officer Operations, Mr. Philip Tudor, to deal with the issue of the debushing. Well, I'll start with Mr. Eswick.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, honorable members. The situation highlighted by the honorable member is one of the most vexing problems at the Transport Authority. And we are seeing it more and more in that operators are simply not completing the routes assigned to them. This has shown its ugly head in areas such as Ferry Valley. I think it's fair to say that Ferry Valley might be one of the most, one of the areas most plagued by this problem. And we at the Transport Authority, and I dare say the Barbados Licensing Authority, there's a shortage of personnel who will be able to review and monitor these situations. I think there's a shortage of inspectors at the Barbados Licensing Authority currently, and unfortunately the Transport Authority has none. We have to rely on complaints from the public, and that in itself comes with a problem, because when there is a hearing, it must be conducted in a very efficient manner, and it requires the complainant to appear before the tribunal to give evidence in support of his or her complaint. But therein lies the problem. A lot of people are reluctant. I dare say the majority of people who make complaints are reluctant to face the operators over the complaints. And in effect, our hands are tied because we then cannot proceed with the hearing on that basis. We've had a lot of discussions with owners, because we are in a relationship with the owners and not necessarily with the operators, that is the drivers and conductors. And we've been asking the owners to please speak to their drivers and just make sure that they complete the routes, because in most cases, as was said earlier, the people who are most affected are the elderly population who rely on these buses to take them to and from home. And we've had stories of people, older people laden with groceries, having to walk up Wilcox Hill and that sort of thing. But it is something that is, occupying our attention, but it is a very challenging situation. We're going to need some serious help in terms of manpower. Of course, there are technological solutions to this, but in the form of GPS monitoring, but that in itself will require substantial funding, and we will be reopening our discussions with the ministry in that regard very shortly.
Yes, good morning, honorable members. First of all, let me just say that there are 1,570 kilometers of roadway in Barbados. It is impossible for us to maintain all 1,570 kilometers. It is impossible for us to maintain all of this roadway, given that we have only about 50 meters since the retrenchment has been done, 50 meters to look after the whole of Barbados. Now on January 15th, we introduced a special weeding and debushing program in which we brought on 40 of those workers who had been retrenched. Contractors. They've contracted out the work to 40 of our members who have been retrenched. And they are doing weed and debushing on what we call a job work basis. In other words, the more you weed, the more money you will be paid, up to a certain limit, of course. To date, over the last 4 weeks, we have spent close to $120,000, and during that time, we've weeded and are debushed. We've weeded, for example, 31,000 meters, and we've debushed another 97,650 square meters of area. So you can see that, given this job work incentive, we are doing far more work than, or we're doing quite a bit of work out there in the ministry. Unfortunately, this program ends on the 31st of March, but what I want to say is that it is difficult for us to maintain both the highways as well as the residential areas. You have to choose one. We can't maintain all, given the amount of roadways that we have out there. So we will endeavor to do as best we can, but we have to recognize that we have limited manpower resources at our disposal.
Follow-up, please let it be related. You already had 2 distinct questions.
Correct, and the follow-up question is directly related.
Please.
Mr. Eswick, I hear what you said in relation to the evidential issue on conducting hearings. I don't accept that for a particular reason. If you have complaints that, for example, Ferry Valley is the most affected area in Barbados for that, then put somebody in Ferry Valley and let them wait for a bus. You can then easily question, or the authority can easily question, the person who's responsible for running that route, how many trips did you make? And if they said they left the terminal 3, 4, 5 times, and the person that you put in Ferry Valley reports that they saw them once or not at all, well then they're obviously not running the route. And to be honest, if the people are not supplying the service for which they're licensed to do, then their licenses should be taken away. The public of Barbados is suffering. It should not be left to the discretion and the whims and fancies of a couple people whether or not they comply with the license which was issued by the government. This is a particular issue for me, and it affects a lot of us, and I'm urging the Transport Board and the Transport Authority to take this a little more seriously, because people and communities are suffering. Thank you.
Just to respond to, 2 questions. First, and to help the situation, we are looking for sure at putting and requiring that GPS monitors be put on all the vehicles. And not only GPS monitors, but cameras too. So that not only will we be able to pinpoint if you've been running your route, and we had a presentation out of a company from Belgium recently, which would actually alert us. So you wouldn't actually have to have somebody monitoring it. They would actually put an alert to the Transport Authority when somebody has not completed their route, when somebody is driving too close to the vehicle in front, when somebody is driving too fast, when somebody is off-route. All of those things can now be done through a technological solution. So that is something that we're looking at for sure, to make sure. And I take the minister's point, and we have to be more proactive to make sure that people are getting value for money, and that if they're paying for service, they must get the service to the full extent of the route. And I just wanted to add, with respect to the bushing and the debushing, that as Mr. Trudeau said, we can't do all the roads. And what happens is people, private individuals, must take responsibility for their private lands as well. And we're bringing a change to the Highways Act very soon, because right now the fine is small. And I'm not going to say how much it is, because then people will not take notice of it. It is that small. But we've been sending out letters to owners, especially the plantation owners, to encourage them to debush and clear their land as it relates to the highway and as it comes onto the road. And we've been having a reasonable response from them. But it also extends to landowners in small plots of land as well. Everybody has to play their part. There are jurisdictions that if you, in Bermuda for example, that if you don't maintain it, the government will go and clean it and charge you an excessive amount of money and put it on your land tax. And we are coming to the point that we have so many people who abandon their land and then leave it for government to maintain it, and it has to come to an end. People have to take responsibility for their property and maintain it appropriately.
Honourable member for St. James North.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I wish to commend the two ministers for the zeal and enthusiasm, passion, and drive that they have brought to their ministerial portfolios, well abled by their team assembled here today. I notice your third strategic goal in the estimates is to maintain and rehabilitate highways and tenantry and residential roads and other public accesses. And of course, this is dealt with in sub-programs 0495, tenantry roads, under program 510 is road network services, as the Honourable Member for St. Peter referred to earlier today, but also highway rehabilitation under sub-program 0511 under the same program. We know that roads is, of course, a bread and butter issue affecting every Barbadian and every Barbadian community. And of course, people are of the opinion, you know, they pay, well, previously, until we abolished it, this government last year, June, high road taxes, which went up 60% under the previous government, and we have abolished that to have a tax at gas pump. And but this is a highly contentious, of course, issue, and you have serious responsibility to the people in terms of roads in my constituency. Of course, I have to speak about that. 6 weeks after I became Member of Parliament in February 2013, I would have written the then Minister of Public Transport, Public Works, on about 16 roads in St. James North. Most of the bad roads in St. James North are actually in the parish of St. Peter, boundaries which I share with the Honourable Member of St. Peter in Aston Hall, and then in Roadview as well, but also in some roads in Sion Hill. And I would have added, I think, about 3 or 4 subsequent to that letter. None of those roads were ever repaired, even though promises were made. And I agree with the Honourable Member of St. Peter, who in his intervention would have spoken, yes, after, I suppose, the worst roads that are identified throughout the country, but some equitable distribution among constituencies in terms of road repairs, at least in terms of patching roads. We know, of course, that we have given priority roads as well, all of us. In my case, I would have given Rotdunda Road, and I'm just wondering, in terms of the strategy of the ministry, you can't, we all understand that, repair all the roads that are in need of fixing, especially since in the 10 years, 4 months under the last administration.
You have a few seconds left.
Thank you. We have not, they did not repair any roads, but I'm just wondering, in terms of the strategy of repairing roads in, St. James North, in terms of equitable distribution of road repairs throughout the country.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Let me say that, for the record, an international road assessment program was completed in Barbados in 2017. The results of this show that 30% of our roads were good, 55% were poor, and 15% were bad. In essence, we have 70% of the roads in Barbados coming out of that, based on that assessment, being classified as very poor, in other words, in need of repairs. The ministry has a four-pronged approach really to this. We have a milling and paving program which just requires that a part of the surface of the road area is removed and replaced. We have the road rehabilitation program, and then there's road reconstruction. And in reconstruction, this generally means that includes the removal of all existing asphalt, surfacing, excavation, and so on. And I think that this would be the area where we would have to target in terms of the 70% of the roads, and perhaps it may be more than that by now, that would need some attention. As I indicated earlier, in terms of prioritizing, priority must take place. The technical work has to be done by the technical officers within the ministry in terms of visiting and so on. And once this is reported to us, and not only reported, because all of us travel from time to time across Barbados and we see what is happening where the roads are concerned. The areas that I have gone through, and there were times, you know, when before you were in this position, there were things that you took perhaps lightly or didn't pay attention to. But now as minister, and I'm sure this is the case with my senior minister Dugid, as we often converse, that there are things that jump out at you. And the road network and the road situation has not escaped us as ministers. And we also add, it has not escaped the government. I made a point yesterday that the first order of business, one of the first things this administration did was to give us $10 million to get equipment, to get the road network repaired. It will take some time. And once the technical officers visit, it will be prioritized. We now have 30 constituencies that we must focus on. Not 18 or 19 or 20, but 30 constituencies. And I get a nod from the honorable leader of the opposition, but the people of St. Michael West voted for this government as well. So in terms of priority, that will be done based on the technical assessments that will be made. And of course, we depend upon, we want ministers and members of parliament to be aware that once something is drawn to our attention, it will be looked at, but we have to look at it in the order of priority. And we know in St. James North we would have had some challenges. We actually would have just done some work, not necessarily on a road, but the honorable member wrote and asked for some assistance in removing a dangerous rock and so on, and the ministry readily assisted, because we are about Barbadians and we are here to work on behalf of Barbados. They gave us the mandate to do it, and this ministry intends to carry out as best as we possibly can and as fair as we know this government operates for all the people of Barbados.
Madam Chair, sorry, okay.
In terms of determining which roads are done on a yearly basis, three things are done. We usually get information from the ministers as to the roads in their constituencies that they need repair, in all the constituencies rather. We also get input from the officers in the field who are responsible for the depots and the areas where these roads are. And thirdly, we get input from those residents who write into us indicating that their roads are in bad condition and they need to be repaired. As I said before, we have 1,570 kilometers of road in Barbados. As the minister alluded, 55% of that is in poor to very poor condition. When we did the math, it would take $832 million to to bring all the roads that are in poor condition to roads that are in fair to good condition. $832 million, right? So we are basically making a little dent, but not a big one, in this road repair program. We have earmarked or identified those roads in this financial year that we plan to do. We have had inputs from the 30 representatives. We have their input. Most of these roads that are going to be on the CAF program, which have been identified, are going to be mill and pave roads. We have set up a program whereby we're going to use the material that has been milled off these roads to help to build or construct
Who recommended
10-inch roads. Mr. Duguid is reminding me that he recommended that when he first came to the ministry, and
you found
to his credit, it's a good idea. Prior to this, we used to just give away the material that we milled off the road, but now we're using it more or less to construct roads in those CART roads where people used to have have to use 2 and 3 pairs of shoes to get from their homes to the main road. So we must thank Mr. Minister Duguid for that. That's it.
Thank you.
Your follow-up?
Yes, Chair. Supplementary in relation to the highways, Highway 2A, but first, yes, again, I congratulate the desire to try to assist. I mean, every time I write the ministers, I get a response very quickly, and yes, they have assisted. Assistance has been obtained from the ministry in terms of some road mirrors, and what the Honourable Member for St. Lucie referred to, a joint partnership, in fact, with a constituent, with heavy-duty equipment company in removing a rock on Rockdunda Road, just as how, in fact, last year, around New Year's, community-minded constituents in Clark's Road took it on themselves to patch up Clark's Road in Aston Hall, since the previous government was doing nothing about it. And I assisted them in so doing. But Highway 2A is a road that is heavily traversed on a daily basis. And I'm wondering if the minister could give the assurance in terms of repairs to Highway 2A, which traverses, of course, not only my constituency, St. James North, but also the Honourable Member for St. Thomas, the Honourable Member for St. James Central, up to the Honourable Member for St. Peter, and of course the Honourable Member for St. Lucie on a daily basis travels along that road. And if that road clearly, if you can tell, satisfy the public of Barbados, especially the people in the north, in terms of rehabilitation of that road. And I could as well ask at this stage to ma'am, in terms of a solution to the junction at Westmoreland, which has caused 3 fatalities within the last 4 years. We had the previous minister in the last government of transport come in October 2017, and town hall meeting at the church right by the roundabout.
Remember, could you please ask your question?
Yes, ma'am. The assurance, any assurance in terms of Highway 2A's rehabilitation, including the solution of the danger at Westmoreland Junction, ma'am.
Thank you, Minister. You'd be aware that that Highway 2A and the Ronald Map, that whole stretch has garnered significant attention of the ministry, and we would have in fact brought papers to Cabinet already to discuss that. But I'll ask Mr. Tudor to give some background on it, and also I want Mr. Dave Scanterbury as well, who's heading the particular project for Highway 2A, to also give some comment on the matter. Highway 2A and Ronald Map.
Just in terms of the maintenance of Highway 2A, we recognize that that section of road has not been done for, I would imagine, over 20 years. We have put aside $3 million to do this section of Highway 2A between Arch Hall Fire Station going down to 1.25 miles. And hopefully we've invited tenders, contractors to give us quotations for the milling and paving of that area, of that section of road. And hopefully within another 3 to 4 weeks, we will start vigorously to upgrade or maintain that section of highway going from Arch Hall Fire Station going down to 1.25 miles St. Peter.
And final supplementary.
Let Mr.
Madam Chair, honorable members, good morning. In terms of the plans for the roundabout highway, which was Highway 2A, what the Cabinet had decided quite recently is to choose a design alternative 3 under the CDB-funded Road and Bridge Improvement Study. And this alternative is an alternative in which we would look at the junctions, and what the consultants are currently doing is designing out the junctions so that we can look at safety as well as minor modifications to various areas in the south of the roundabout highway. That detailed design is not completed as yet, and therefore I would say that in the next, by June, what we would have in hand would be a completed design, a least cost design, so that we could address the safety issues that we see right now, as well as doing something with the lack of capacity in the area.
Would this rehabilitation include street lights? Just to, on that point, because this is a quite poorly lit section of the highway.
Street lights are definitely part of it. You have to remember that the roundabout highway has different characteristics. It moves from Warrens right north until you get to 1.25 miles. So you get residential areas which will get street lights, and you also have very rural areas in which you will have no street lights. So Cyan Hill, for example, would have a few street lights. Now we're looking at lighting there, really no widening, and other built-up areas, those would have street lights. But we have to bear in mind that safety is important, but also we have to keep the costs down.
Honorable Member for St. Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Mr. Minister, I had indicated to you that, or rather you had indicated to me that you would hope that I go a little easy on you with respect to White Hill. And I had given you the assurance that I would. That is until I saw, or rather I had a chance to glean through the estimates with respect to what are the plans for White Hill. You would recall, I'm not so sure whether or not you were here in Barbados in November 2014 when a major catastrophe occurred in White Hill. The then government of Barbados showed absolutely no sympathy whatsoever to the people in White Hill. As a matter of fact, the minister came on the site. I mean, the road was broken away in a manner that no one could imagine. I don't think that anyone could have envisaged that a road would have collapsed like that during a period of bad rainfall. And the minister came on the site, and he said immediately he did not invite the minister to the site visit. But in the same way that I crash parties when it's somebody's birthday or a little celebration in St. Andrew, I mean, that's the reason why I've been there for so long. I actually crashed the site visit. And he indicated then that this road is abandoned. Now, this White Hill debacle achieved such prominence that the then leader of the opposition, now the Prime Minister, visited the area on about 5 occasions with the representative for the area. And we gave an undertaking to the people of White Hill that the road would be addressed. I mean, an undertaking. There are 2 aspects of the White Hill. You have to look in terms of the road infrastructure, addressing the road infrastructure. And secondly, the question of reciting the people who were affected by that massive disaster in November 2014. The question of the actual reciting, that is being dealt with in the Ministry of Housing, because as Minister of Housing, I will ensure that those people who need to be recited will be recited. But the question of the actual the road reconfiguration is one that we are disappointed about. I mean, we understand the economic situation as it is right now, but at least something could have been mentioned in the estimates with respect to government's plans for that reconfiguration of the roads. And I don't want you to put me on to the technical officers in the ministry, because I mean, this is a policy decision that has to be taken by you as minister with respect to what has to be done, because the technical people could tell you this road cannot be fixed, and certain things must have to be done. But it has not been addressed. I'm really disappointed. I don't know what to tell the people. I had a call from one of the residents in White Hill, and they said, I've gone through the estimates in the past. I mean, even though the minister, the former government, they were not very sympathetic to the plight of the people in St. Andrew, in White Hill. Yet, the last government included in the estimates certain sums for the rehabilitation of the roads. I mean, something was mentioned there, even though we know that we didn't take them serious. But I want to know, I mean, I understand the situation. I want the people of St. Andrew to have some sort of comfort with respect to what are the plans. If the road cannot be rebuilt in its present form, something has to be done. The member for St. Joseph did his homework when you had the situation with those people in Joe's, I think it's Joe's River. There were some fatalities. It took fatalities to bring some sort of sense to the government of the day, even though it was not in the constituency represented by the last government. I mean, and if it would be difficult, I mean, I'm going to finish in a few seconds.
Thank you.
If it is difficult to reconfigure the road in its present state, at least just what happened in Joseph, we would like to hear from you as minister whether or not an alternative road will be built for the people in White Hill, because this is something that was promised by the leader of the opposition, no Prime Minister. It has been promised by me as the parliamentary representative, and I'll tell you this, I am not going to leave the St. Andrew. I'm going to be contesting the election after election until White Hill Road has been fixed.
First, thank you, Minister. And as a former Minister of Transport Works and Maintenance that you were, who was able to do a lot of roads in St. Andrew, so much so that there are very, very few roads left to get attention in St. Andrew, but of course White Hill is one of them. And you would recall that I visited White Hill with you very soon after taking office. And first, we recognized it is a significant problem, and we will address it, but I'll come to that shortly. We also found that there was a second part that was breaking away by almost what looked like a bridge. And we put significant resources into putting a gabion there, because if that second part had broken away, the White Hill area, the residents on that side would have been totally cut off, because they'd have been cut off in the one catastrophe that happened in November of that year, and then the second would have put them between 2 sections that had broken away. So we put a lot of resources into getting those gabions done. I believe they're about 80% complete, and they should be finished shortly. With respect to the other area, which is the main section, obviously you could not go in and do a road without the empirical evidence And a gentleman, I guess I can call his name, Mr. Sidney Robertson, was contracted to get the empirical evidence and put forward whether a new road could go on the exact site or whether he had to give an alternate location for the road. And he's not only given the alternate location, but he's also given an alternate way of how the road could be constructed using precast concrete. And I have submitted that to you, Minister, obviously before I've taken it to Cabinet, for you to meet with us, to look and see if you agree with the way forward on this. We've had some very robust discussions, not only personally, but also in Cabinet about this matter. And I must tell you that it has taken all of the attention of the ministry. We anticipate, from what Mr. Robertson has said, that it will cost in the vicinity of $8 million, between $5 to $8 million, and that's his preliminary assessments. But we could not put something in unless we had the empirical evidence. Now that we have the empirical evidence, and now that we have something for us to actually sit and look at, then we will be able to come back later. But we first have to have that empirical evidence. And so, but we look forward to having a visit with you to look at the alternates and go through the program. And then once we come to agreement, we hope to get that back to Cabinet for the Cabinet of Barbados to agree.
Mr. Minister, it would be good if some mention of what you're saying could have been seen in the estimates in terms of the plans of the ministry. I'm glad for that explanation, and I hope that that you as minister will use your good office to ensure that whatever has to be done in order to satisfy what the trauma of the residents of St. Andrew of White Hill, because I mean it is not just a case of you're abandoning a road. This is a road that is an important link to the rest of St. Andrew, and I would hope that this will be addressed for the future. But more importantly, the housing situation, as I said, that is being addressed. But more importantly, the question of the transportation. The Transport Board must take some blame in this regard, because they had made arrangements to have a shuttle. Because I mean, the work that you did, that the ministry has done since the 24th of May, has more or less stopped the residents of White Hill from being marooned, and in that respect, I would like to thank the ministry for that work. But I mean, doing this work and then not addressing the transportation issue is a very serious matter. It was agreed that there would have been a shuttle, and that shuttle is not working. You have students at the schools get into school, the secondary schools, at midday. You get into school at midday, you have to leave at 2 o'clock. The shuttle is not working. And I believe, I don't know what mechanism you could use within the ministry to ensure that the people in White Hill are not disadvantaged in any way, whether or not you give them some sort of tokens so that they wouldn't have to catch 3 or 4 buses in order to get to town. But it is not their fault. They pay taxes like anybody else. And I think the question, the transportation issues and the problems that they face is something that should be addressed. It should be a matter of priority for your ministry, taking into consideration the undertaking, the commitment of the Prime Minister, then leader of the opposition. When we visit, there is no other area in Barbados that had that prominence. And I would like some assurance from the Transport Board that the transportation issues will be addressed.
Again, thank you, Minister. Big part of that problem is the bus availability that we have and the difficulties associated. But I'll ask Ms. Sue, as General Manager of the Transport Board, to address the issue of the shuttle in particular and the ability to get the residents of White Hill transported.
Thank you, Minister. That matter will be addressed in short order. What I'm currently working on, there are approximately 60 buses which we are working on for inspection. And I expect that within the next 2 to 3 weeks, that matter would be addressed. So as I assured all members, and I'm aware of the issues you're having with the shuttle, but in another 2 to 3 weeks, there should be some improvement. I'm aware of that. I've put systems in place because we know of the challenges, and I will continue to monitor that area. But once our bus availability, as the Honourable Minister said, increases, you should see some improvement.
On that same issue, there are certain individuals who are especially challenged in that area, extending to the Orange Hill area as well, if I may extend the question. And my understanding is that it has become very, very, very difficult in the past few weeks to transport students at the Learning Center, you know, with respect to the plans that you all have put in place. And it is something that you probably might not be aware of, or rather the complaints might be channeled to the wrong person. But I would also like you to look at the problems being experienced by persons who are especially challenged. A parent called me only today. She lives in Shuri Village. With respect to the Learning Center, there's also one from the White Hill area as well. And they would like this situation to be addressed, and I would urge that you check to see the type of problems.
Show you of that, Honourable Minister, because those buses that we had assigned for the physically challenged, we do have some issues with the lifts, etc., but we have assigned 4 other buses to assist. So I shall take that into consideration and have it reviewed. Thank you.
Honourable Member for St. Michael East.
I'm a little concerned because I believe that all ministries, including the one that I represent, we should have a vision of how we are going to approach the future to make the distinction between this political party and those that were before us. I get the impression sometimes that we are still holding on to a pothole culture. A lot of focus is on highways. Nobody seems to remember that the old plantation economy left a lot of mud behind, and people break off the shoe heels. And I'm not seeing the determination to eliminate those features from the entire national landscape. I'm sorry that the intervention will be a bit short, but I have an area which I represent in St. Michael's East. I also believe it is an imperative that I also say something on the behalf of my colleague who is not present here in this chamber today, which is Southeast. We represent, to my eastern side, I represent a suburban community. I would like to see a major modern physical transformation of the features in that community. I have concerns about drainage problems in that community. I have concerns about the road network in that community, in Monroe Road and in Roberts Road. Roberts Road is a good link road between Salters and Map Hill. I don't like generic answers about we're going to do that, and all of those kind of answers are of no great value to the people who are experiencing these disadvantages in these streets. What I'm going to ask is, how soon can I expect a response to assisting St. Michael's East and Southeast in addressing the problems, especially Link Road between Salters and Map Hill, which is Roberts Road, and obviously the areas of Monroe Road as well?
Thank you, Minister. As far as I'm aware, a contract was awarded for Salters Road already, and that road is about 100% complete. It's about 20% complete, and the contractor has a deadline to finish that by March 31st. Of course, we do get contractors who go over their deadline from time to time, and in all fairness to the member for St. Michael Southeast, I must tell you that I am even although she is not here, I am in constant contact with her about getting that road completed. So that contract actually was awarded, and it's about 20% complete, and I'm behind the contractor constantly to get that road done. With respect to tenantry roads that are muddy, I have to differ with you fully. As you said, and you've heard said here by Mr. Tudor, that we've been using a lot of the mill and pave stuff to fix a lot of those roads. We can't do all at once, but once that road is identified and it can take the mill and pave stuff, it's all about recycling. And once it can take that recycled stuff, we will put that stuff down, roll it in, oil it, and I can tell you that I have roads that were done unknown to the ministry at the time when I was the Member of Parliament then, because I got the stuff from the depot, rolled it in. I have been back to those roads 12 years later, and those roads are still reasonable. And that is a good way of fixing the roads. In fact, the engineer, Mr. Tudor, had to agree that it is a good way. And once we can identify that and get that stuff rolled in for you, and I believe that you are in fact using some of it at NCC going into botanical gardens, and you would see that it's been quite useful for you. So you could imagine the same way that you can use it at the back of NCC, where you can identify those areas, you'll be able to use it as well in the other parts of the constituency of St. Michael East. And you know, I tend to refer to family. You know, St. Michael East gave me a wife, and who I love dearly, and I believe she might be watching. And in fact, I know she's watching. So therefore, I have a certain vested interest to make sure that St. Michael East is well taken care of.
You see, it's perceptions and philosophical directions and everything. Mr. Minister, my perception of modernizing the community, I don't think that mix thrown on mud with probably 2 or 3 inches as an interim arrangement can be seen as a major transformation of the physical environment in any specific community. I really see that as an interim arrangement. And I would hope that, and I know you made reference to Salters, but I was making reference to the link road between Salters, not Salters itself, but the link road between Salters and Map Hill. And I'm also talking about the roads that are sandwiched between Salters and Map Hill. When I'm talking about the link roads within the community, a lot of those roads need repairs badly. And I would hope that your first choice would not be what I call secondary material, putting on those roads as a feature of modernization.
Clearly, Minister, it is an interim measure. We would need significant funds to do a full rehabilitation, but those funds are not available at this time. And as the funds become available, as Mr. Tudor said, that people put forward roads, you would have put forward the road that you have prioritized, and that road will be done, and it will be done not as an interim measure, but to the highest level that the ministry can do. And then every year we anticipate that we will be able to do roads for people in their various constituencies. If we had the $1 billion that it would take to fix all of the roads in Barbados, we would get it done. But the fact of the matter is, the last administration so depleted the resources of this country that we do not have the roads fixed in the way they should be fixed, and therefore we do not have the resources. But we are going to work and continue to work with what resources we do get to do the best job we can every single day.
Any last comment, member?
Madam Chair, probably the most important aspect of the discourse is that the minister fully understands the causality that has led us to the specific crisis, and I just want him at least to make the general public fully aware of the challenges which we are facing as a government.
Thank you. I believe the honourable member for Christchurch East Central has not spoken on this as yet. You may speak. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Minister, I want to raise a few issues relating to, first of all, street lighting, particularly as it relates to the area leading into the entrance to Kingston, and as well as some issues relating to road infrastructure in that Christchurch area, particularly Newton, the general Kingston area especially, as well as it relates to some flood mitigation measures for Wharton. So I'm just going to give you the opportunity to first of all, let me thank you and your team for starting to address, specifically in the Venus Drive area in Wharton, some of an area that was significantly impacted by the passage of Tropical Storm Kurt. I know those works have already begun. But in the Cherry Wood Circle, which is slightly to the south of that area, where oftentimes you get 6 to 7 feet of flood waters within those houses, I want to first get from you such that the residents of that specific area in Cherry Wood Circle could understand exactly what is the time frame for execution of the works that, obviously, having started in Venus Drive, which is just a few hundred meters to the north, that what is the time frame for execution of works such that the residents within the Cherrywood Circle area can anticipate that in the upcoming hurricane season that they can see some relief from that matter, and then I'll ask a follow-up question.
Thank you, Minister. So I'm hearing essentially two questions, one about lighting and the other about drainage. I'll first ask Ms. Tyrone White, who is Director of the Government Electrical Engineering Division, to give us an update on the lighting.
Good morning, Madam Chair, honorable members. As we realized, in the Kingston area, we had a number of streetlight poles which were missing. These were due basically to vehicular accidents. And the severity of those accidents really damaged the streetlight bases. Over the years, we've been having challenges in the repair of those bases. We have been working with the South Point Depot, and we've come up basically with what we feel is a most economical repair method. The teams have been engaged in those repairs over the last couple of weeks, and we have now, in conjunction with the ministry, who had purchased some additional 200 streetlights for us over the past weeks. We got those streetlights from the port, I think 2 weeks ago, and they have been deployed earlier this week. So right now we're having a two-prong approach where we are replacing the streetlights and also doing some pole erections along the Kingsland area going east towards the airport. And we hope that within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will have a significant portion of that roadway fully lit again, and improvements in the general highway lighting from the airport down to University within the next 2 to 3 months.
Any follow-up?
Yes. So thanks very much for that, because obviously persons have great difficulty recognizing the actual entrance to Kingston. So I think that work needs to be advanced as quickly as possible. I appreciate the follow-up on that. I want to just make sure that you guys remember the question as it relates to the drainage issue in Cherrywood Circle. So, and then I have another one.
The strategy that the division is seeking to take would be to intercept the waters before they actually get to the Cherrywood Circle area. We are looking at utilizing the large, substantial playing field area, which is to the south of Venus Drive, and in that general area, I think there are 2 schools in the area. There's a large area there where we're looking at implementing about 4 large wells, and then to create some large depression areas so as to retain used as what we call a retention area. So as the water flows into that area, instead of it flowing to the Cherrywood Circle area, we would look to retain a significant portion of that water in that area instead of it going to the Cherrywood Circle area. There are also 2 wells just before you get to the Cherrywood Circle. We're also looking at repairing those because they appear to be significantly blocked by debris as well. So once we are thinking that once we carry out the maintenance and those improvements, we should have a significant reduction of or the potential of flooding from occurring in that area.
Honorable member for St. George.
Sorry, I have a
Sorry, go ahead.
a follow-on question, and it's a suggestion, but there's also, as it relates to, because I hear the minister keeps referring to familial relations. The residents of Kingston have been asking for some time that, and this is a suggestion which I don't necessarily need to answer right now, that the St. Patrick's bus that passes through Kingston on the way to St. Patrick's, that some consideration be given by the transport board that as the bus is coming back to the city, that it actually passes back through Kingston so that persons will be able to get to town. So I just want to put that on as a recommendation to the minister and certainly to the board to give some consideration for the largest residential community in Barbados. Minister, there are a number of roads, certainly in the constituency, that are in dire need of repair. And I searched my my electoral list and I noticed that there's some duggies in Newton. And so I would want to encourage you, sir, since you've been speaking of your familial relations all across the country, that some serious consideration be given certainly to Newton, not only because there are duggies in Newton, but certainly, and notwithstanding that I know you're going to suggest that funding isn't available, but I heard you yesterday speak about the roads that you were doing all across the country, and I would think that certainly Newton, as well as some of the other areas, Elizabeth Park, Regency Park, I know there's been some work done already. But the reality is that I think having started on a process whereby you've mapped out based on the resources that have been made available to you, that you can give some direction in terms of what is the plan for residents in Christchurch East Central, which includes Kingston, Wotton, as well as Regency Park, Elizabeth Park, and Newton in general, as well as Durance. What is the time frame, or when next then can they expect to have some repairs done? But as a follow-on to that, I want to say from a...
You don't have so many follow-ons.
Just very, because I just want to give him the opportunity to respond completely. One of the things that concerns residents as well is that persons come and just throw the hot mix into the potholes. And I think given that we are in a very constrained environment, that I would want to suggest that your ministry and the technical people look at literally making sure that as they're coming through to do those repairs to the roads, that the various potholes are dug out properly, such that you do a proper fix, so that we don't end up having to spend money again in a couple of months' time when the rain comes in. So I want to ask whoever the technical person whether or not that is something that can be worked into the plan, such that the repairs that we are actually doing in the ministry will last much longer, which will bring, I think, a greater level of satisfaction to the taxpayers of this country. So, Minister, if you can elaborate, I'll be happy to hear.
Thank you very much, Minister. And let me give you your proper title, Minister in the Ministry of Finance. And clearly, the reason why I'd give you that proper title is because once the Ministry of Finance is prepared to release the funds, we are prepared to do the roads. So I think it comes back to your ministry by extension, because we can put forward and do as many roads, and we are able and capable to do the roads together with the contractors and the ministry. Now, if your ministry, the ministry which you are with, could release an additional $10 million, and it's actually within your power to adjust these estimates right now today, and to change the estimates to put the Ministry of Transport Works and Maintenance an additional $10 million to do for road construction. We'd be happy to address not only your roads, but all of the other roads that all the other members would like to have addressed. That is the first aspect to it. The second aspect to it is, in my former life, I spent a lot of time as a neurosurgeon and as a dentist first preparing the cavity and then filling it. And I have impressed on the technical people that our people who go and patch the roads must prepare the wicket first before they fill it. And I have Mr. Tudor here, and Mr. Tudor has given me certain indications that he will again go through training with our people from the depots, and also the contractors and everybody who is involved in road maintenance and road repair, that we will encourage and impress on them to go out, get the roads, get the potholes prepared before they patch them. So we are aware of the problem, and we are addressing that as necessary. But Minister and the Ministry of Finance, it is within your power. The Prime Minister, who is the Minister of Finance, is not here right now, so I guess that it would fall to you. And we are happy to take the additional $10 million if you see your way to give it to us and get more roads done in those constituencies, in the constituency. And I thank you.
Honourable Member for St. George South.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and morning to all. Yesterday, I heard the technical officer manager, Mr. Tudor. I know he has done some tremendous work, especially in rural Barbados for us, and I want to compliment him. But yesterday, when he was asked by the member for St. Michael's South and also for St. John when the equipment will arrive, he said soon. And I don't believe soon is an answer. I heard the member for St. Michael East, soon is not an answer in these times. So I would like him to respond, because like all members in this lower chamber, St. George, and I speak for the member who's ill with conjunctivitis, St. George North and St. George South, we too need equipment to get our roads done. So that's one of the questions. The second question relates to tenantry roads, because I haven't heard any mention, or I haven't seen anything.
Honourable Member, that is not a related question. That's two full questions.
Yes, it is related.
What was the first question?
The whole aspect of the use of concrete as it relates to fixing the roads,
Okay,
so it is
ahead.
related. So I have not seen in the estimates any mention of concrete roads, and when we talk about sustainability, I would like to know from the Minister and his technical team, what are the plans for the 2019-2020 estimates as it relates to concrete roads, because they are indeed more durable and they are even less expensive than prior years, and there's technology that we can engage in to have concrete roads. So I would like to hear from the Minister and his team, what are the plans for concrete roads, and when we will get the necessary equipment at Bournemouth to fix and patch the roads.
Thank you, Minister.
There's no equipment at Bournemouth. I see one of the technical officers looking at me as if I'm speaking foreign language. There's no equipment at Bournemouth.
Thank you, Minister. I fully agree with you that the concrete...
Golden Ridge is in Bournemouth.
Thank you, Minister. I fully agree that the concrete road solution is a better solution. In fact, you took us to see a concrete road in your constituency that was done, I believe, over a decade or maybe more, and there was not one pothole in the road, obviously. And the road was of a very high standard. And we recognize that concrete roads are an option, and it is not an option that we have pursued as vigorously as we should. Part of the problem is when the utilities then come to have to do work on the concrete road, it doesn't augur as easily as it does the asphalt, because they have to use different equipment to cut the road and then to reinstate it. So that is the issue, and what we have to do is to get the services to the reserves. So when you're doing a concrete road, you have to put the services at the reserves. And that is an issue, but that is something that the ministry is taking on board. With respect to the equipment, I've asked Ms. Diane Spencer to come and give us an update on the timelines for some of the equipment. because it's of paramount importance, because obviously there's a time lag from the time we order the equipment from the time we actually receive it. So, Ms. Spencer.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of Parliament. I am going to speak to the $5 million first, which was sourced through the centralized department, which is Government Procurement Department, and some timelines on that. And I think you would be aware that a lot of the heavier ones, equipment was in the $10 million package, which went to tenders. And right now, we are going to be looking at that on Thursday at the Tenders Committee, so we cannot give timelines on that one yet. But the $5 million, we can give the timelines on. We have the HIAB, which would assist Mr. White on the highway. We are continuing using the present one by fixing it, patching it so that it can work until that's a 7-month delivery. The patching trucks, we have one patching truck coming in 3 weeks. That's about the middle of March. We have backhoes, one backhoe which will be shipped this week. So that arrival will be about mid-April. We have 2 skid steers that will be shipped on March 20th. The D6 will arrive in 16 weeks. That will help with the water courses. But meanwhile, we have other stuff that we can use in the meantime that would assist us in getting that done. Lighting towers, you would have heard that we started work at night. We will be receiving those at the end of March. The trash pumps, but this is not the one for the Princess Alice Highway or Bayland. These are ones that will be available to use in flood-prone areas. We are expecting them in April. The plate compactors and additional generators, we'll be expecting them at the end of March. We have already received the weed whackers, which the contract workers and the persons at the depots have already started to use to help the bushing. We have received 2 skid steers, which have been assigned under the instruction of Mr. Tudor, and 5 generators, which are the pump for Princess Alice Highway will be supplied, delivered, and installed and commissioned within 20 weeks. So it will be here just about by mid-June. That should be completed. And the one for the Bayland is 14 to 16 weeks. Thank you. Thank you. That's finished.
That's it. That is timelines for the equipment, the first $5 million. The other 10 million equipment, those timelines, well, the tenders are being reviewed, but those timelines, some are earlier, some are later, but it takes time for the equipment to be received.
Thank you. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, ma'am. That's been about 60 or 70 questions from the government side, literally. Since the last question from the opposition side, there's something wrong with the configuration of this honorable House.
That is really not true.
No reflection on your management of the process, ma'am.
It's really not true though.
All right. It felt like 60 or 70.
Exactly.
Madam Chair,
Sir.
to the Minister of Transport, Works and Maintenance, there is provision for a reduced level of revenue through the PSV account in these estimates. So by $6 million less anticipated to be received in revenue from PSVs. It's in the document, it's in the books.
22 questions.
You can confirm that. Yeah, so there's a $6 million reduction in anticipated revenue through the PSV account here in the documents, these estimates of revenue. One may be tempted to easily conclude that this may result from the shift as a result of last June's policies, the shift from road taxes and other fees to fuel tax. Of course, the revenues will also show that the fuel tax significantly brought government fairly high levels of revenue, and is projected going forward to increase significantly as well. Or one might wonder if there's being contemplated the removal of some of the PSVs from the system. Yesterday, the chairman of the Transport Authority intimated, and I'm seeking some clarification on that you're going to be shifting the approval process from the licensing authority to the Transport Authority because of the unfortunate circumstance of how the routes are now allocated in a very imbalanced way, and some routes have on significantly excessive numbers of PSVs and others are not so fortunate. So you're trying to address that, and you're going to make a change in the approval system. Yesterday, the chairman sort of intimated that that may be the opportunity, and I shouldn't say opportunity, that may be the circumstance under which some of the PSVs may be removed from the system. Now, I raise this in the interest of those who operate at that level in the public transport system in Barbados. They asked for a meeting with me a few weeks ago, and one of their concerns was the potential threat to their existence and survival, which may result from the introduction of the electric buses, which they are told and advised will not be able to ply the hilly routes of Barbados, and therefore may be confined to operating on the south coast, the west coast, which is a significant portion of the trafficking area for the PSVs. So I'm saying there's that concern already, and then we had those statements yesterday, and I see in the estimates a reduction in the amount of revenue anticipated from them. So that is my concern, that we have some clarity on that.
Thank you, Honorable Leader of the Opposition. First, as you did rightly say in your presentation, that the quantum for road tax was in fact cut. I believe it was down to 50% to what it was, and I'll ask Mr. Virgil Knight, our Chief Licensing Officer, to comment on that. But that is the main reason why you're seeing that reduction. And then after that, I'll get the Chairman of the Transport Authority to comment on the route rationalization. It's not to be cutting or moving anybody, as I understand it. It's to rationalize the routes so that the routes are shared better amongst everybody else. But I'll ask Mr. Virgil Knight, the Chief Licensing Officer, to comment on the quantum first.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members. In relation to the question of the reducing revenue for the PSVs, as you will be aware, the PSVs before paid a portion of permit fees and a portion of road tax. As of 11th of June 2018, the road tax fee was cut by 50% for all those commercial vehicles. So as a result, we will have, or we'll be collecting less on the PSV head. I guess that would be taken up on the road tax, or the tax, fuel tax. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Knight. So that answers that part. With respect to the other question for the PSVs on route rationalization, and as I am aware, the Transport Authority was always the people who approved those permits, and it was never the Licensing Authority. The Licensing Authority only finally issued the license at the end, right before the Transport. It's only happened before Transport Authority, but since the Transport Authority, they're the people who do the approval. But I'll ask the Chairman, Mr. Eswick, to comment.
Madam Chair, My statement yesterday about the removal of some of the units from the oversaturated routes was made in the context of then transferring them to the less service routes. It was certainly not the intention that we would remove them from the system. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Supplementary, you have one more left. Go ahead.
Yes, Madam Chair, and thank you. There's a question of revenue sharing arrangements in the context of the introduction of electric buses in Barbados. I wonder if the minister is in a position to speak as to what those revenue sharing arrangements are likely to be.
With respect to that, though, that is still in the tender process. You would know that the Transport Board have issued a tender, and they're now reviewing and assessing those documents. And I wouldn't want to prejudice that process at this time. But not clear to say that once the tender has been awarded, then we'll obviously come back and give full explanation. But that is currently in the tender process.
Thank you. And to correct you, Honorable Member, that was 8 persons or 22 questions since you last came on.
Madam Chair,
Thank you very much.
the comment was rather facetious
I'm
rather
trying.
than serious. I was teasing, man.
No, it's the Honorable Member for Christchurch. Sorry, St. Michael South Central. You're quite welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question relates to Program 512, Subprogram 516, Scotland District Special Works, where there is an amount allocated of just under 2.15 million. Now, the Scotland District is about 15% of Barbados. The area sees considerable landslide and land slippage activity, which has significant economic costs, both in the way of loss of infrastructure, loss of personal property, as we've seen over the last few years in the area. And I know the member for St. Andrew in particular would be able to attest to this, and economic loss in the way of loss of livelihoods. If people are not able to, if there's land slippage in an area, if people are not able to get out, get around, get to work and so on, then it is a threat to their livelihoods. It has further costs in the agriculture sector, because when we have significant land slippage, it can often render land untillable, not just for a short term, but for a long-term period. The area also has some biodiversity concerns, and certainly from the perspective of the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Investment, we have been asked to prioritize, as part of the public sector investment program that we manage, prioritize investment and works and permanent solutions in this area. As you are aware, ministers, there is a climate strategy and climate finance team in the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Investment that, along with a technical working group from across a range of ministries, has been looking to mobilize climate finance for major works in the area. There needs to, of course, be a strong climate argument if we are able to access grant and concessional funds to be able to permanently address the stabilization and other related issues in the Scotland District area. And I say permanent because these budgeted amounts suggest to me, especially when I make reference to the forward estimates and to the revised estimates for 18-19, suggests to me that what we are seeking to do is to have this kind of ongoing piece-by-piece approach to addressing works in the area. We can't allow another year or a few years to pass without implementing a clear and sustained strategy. And I think that we have to take advantage of the climate finance opportunities to be able to do so. So what are the plans to Once and for All work to mobilize the financing, but also what is the implementation strategy to deal? I'm sure you would have to collaborate with the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, but what is the strategy to address the Scotland District issue?
Thank you, Minister, for your question. I will hand over to Mr. Tudor, who will give an update on that particular sub-program.
Yes. One must recognize that to fix a road in any part of Scotland District can cost up to 3 to 4 times the cost to fix a road in any other part of Barbados, simply because we have to look at not only the surface drainage but also the subsurface drainage, because we're usually dealing with clay soils in those areas. We also have to look at building gabions and retaining wall structures to resist the tendency for roads in those areas to fail and have landslides. The money that we are requesting basically for this financial year is to do repairs in Dark Hole. We currently, as the Minister said, we're currently working in a section of White Hill doing repairs there, and thereafter we'll go to Dark Hole. The money earmarked is to not only do the repairs, to buy gabions, to buy the aggregate, to put in those gabions, and this is what that $2 million will be used for in the Scotland District for this coming financial year. Thank you.
Thank you, but the second part of the question had to do with climate resilience, and we're asked the PS to come and address that part of it and the strategy going forward from a climate resilience point of view. Mark Cummins, Permanent Secretary.
Thank you, Minister. With respect to the climate resilient infrastructure, our Chief Planning Officer is part of the committee, the larger governmental committee, and the Scotland District, because of its peculiarities, has always posed some significant challenges. One of the documents that will be of benefit to us is the geotechnical report that is currently being done for White Hill, which we expect to receive very shortly. But outside of that, there are other areas within the Scotland District, Horse Hill, stretching all the way to Zorsland in St. John, where we've been experiencing some challenges with slippage over the years. And I know that our Chief Planning Officer, and this would obviously be part of our strategy going forward, would be to work with that governmental committee to see what sort of special grant funding we can get. We also have access to the Scott Wilson study, which was done, I think, around 2009, 2010, and that came as a result of grant funding from the FAO. And that document provides some very, very, very solid background information where both the erosion slippage and the land slippage were categorized into various types, and specific areas were identified. There were some areas identified where there should be no development. So I think one of the things that the larger governmental committee can look at and hopefully seek to resolve would be a long-term land use strategy for the Scotland District, which will go a long way when it is coupled with the climate resilient infrastructure.
Just, if I may ask a follow-up question. Now that you mention, P.S. Cummins, the land use issue, you are of course aware that there's a draft physical development plan that is with us in the investment division at the moment. So I would love to know your thoughts, given that we do need to have a defined strategy since this Scotland District issue is at the top of the public sector investment program. It is a key priority for us to be able to address, not somewhere down the road, but urgently. Given that we do have this draft physical development plan that we will soon be speaking with and hearing from the people of Barbados about, what can be introduced therein, or is there something introduced therein that addresses the issue of land use in the Scotland District area?
Madam Chair, the proposed amendment to the physical development plan does address the land use strategy for the Scotland District over the next 5 to 10 years. It seeks to consolidate settlements in those areas where settlement currently exists, because in our Scotland District forms a significant portion of the Barbados National Park, which is a working landscape, and the current policy seeks to rationalize settlement in the areas where we have existing villages. There are some areas which are not recommended for development, but there are different forms of agriculture, forestry, and other types of activities. But one of the major things that the proposed amendment to the physical development plan sets out for the Scotland District, especially in National Park, is the area of nature-based tourism, where not only is there significant access to hiking trails, but if my memory serves me correctly, areas where there was reference to situations where you can have bed and breakfast. For example, in certain villages along the old train line, which are all hiking trails, persons can start out hiking early in the morning after spending the night in the community. You also have situations where there's significant emphasis on community tourism and the cultural heritage aspects that one will find throughout the national park, and by extension the Scotland District. But the particular challenge of erosion and land slippage, that has also been set out, and research has shown over the years that where new settlement is introduced, as soon as roof water, grey water, or black water enters into the soil, that is when the slippage situation is exacerbated. So as it relates to the existing settlements, those areas, there were specific ways and means of draining those areas and taking the water away from the settlements. Also, when the streams have been identified, there is a way of channeling the water from the streams away from the settlement in an effort to starve the clays of as much water as possible. So there is, in my opinion, the proposed amendment to the physical development plan does set out a very clear strategy for the management of the Scotland District, and by extension the Barbados National Park, which for the record is a Category 4 landscape and it has been recognized by the World Conservation Union because of not only the landscape but also the seascape. So we do have a very significant place there, and it is also on our UNESCO. Barbados has placed it on the UNESCO World Heritage listing for consideration as the next submission, which is scheduled to look at the story of sugar and the industrialization. So the Scotland District also has significant potential from an economic standpoint.
Thank you. Well, he's not in his seat. Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too would, I'm speaking on the head 514, subprogram 514. I know that I would have walked the area with the minister at Denton Road, the bridge at Denton Road, and I would just want to, for the record, just to ask the minister, whenever funds are necessary or become necessary, that he would include a program of repair for the bridge at Denton Road Rosettes. It is a very, it's in very, well, it's a need for repair, and I know that I showed the minister the area, and I know that his team will continue to work on it. And then the issue on sub-program 524 street lighting, Minister, I will also resend the list to your ministry, and I'll be grateful for any works that you could facilitate in respect of street lighting throughout the constituency. In respect of sub-program 527, that's the subsidy for the transport board, I believe the leader of the opposition, the honourable member Sir Michael West, would have asked questions in respect of bus fares and employment. It is my recollection, and I think it's a wonderful, I think the leader presented, the opposition presented a wonderful opportunity for us to answer a question. I'm aware that there is a statement of corporate intent at the Transport Board, and in respect to layoffs, I believe it goes back to 2015 when they had a program of layoffs, and the Democratic Labour Party administration, then the government, would have reduced staffing levels, I believe, from 850 to 597 workers, a loss of, I would say, 253 workers were sent home, and that was in 2015 under the then Democratic Labour Party government. And I would therefore wish for the general manager, I believe, acting, if she's familiar with the corporate statement of intent, and if it is also true that approximately 253 workers were sent home during that period of 2015 as part of a redundancy program. And I will come back with subsidiary questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, the honourable member, and I will hand over, as the question was essentially asked directly to the General Manager, I'll hand over to Ms. Sue. Felicia Sue, the Acting General Manager of the Transport Board.
Chairman of committees and honourable member, yes, I am aware of the document, and yes, you're correct, approximately 274 persons were sent home at that time, bringing the number to currently, there were 574, it was reduced to. We are now currently at approximately 540 employees as a result of retirements since then. So yes.
Follow-up question will be on the issue of bus fares, and I believe the leader of the opposition was asking about a $5 increase in bus fare, not under this Barbados Labour Party administration, but I would wish for the management of the Transport Board to confirm whether in that plan, the 2016 corporate plan, I believe you referred to it as statement of corporate intent, whether or not there was a suggestion that bus fare would have been computed or estimated at $5 and I believe 40 cents. And this was not during the time when this government was in office, but when the last government, the Democratic Labour Party government, was in office. I just wonder if you could confirm to this honourable chamber whether or not that was the estimated increase in bus fare in Barbados at the proposed line.
That is correct, honourable member, and it was done having taken into consideration the rate of inflation and in discussion with the central bank at that time. Yes, it is correct, 540.
Thank you for your confirmation, and perhaps the genesis would not be in the Barbados Labour Party, but the genesis would have been in the Democratic Labour Party. So I believe that that $5 figure was presented in corporate documentation under the then Democratic Labour Party. But I would also like to conclude with my subsidiary question, and considering the record levels of expenditure associated with the maintenance of the Transport Board, and this was done, like I said, I believe it was yesterday, with declining bus availability, but we still had record levels of expenditure I believe the variance in some instances was close to about $70 million with declining revenue. I don't want you to say where the money went. What I would like to understand, in your opinion, whether or not, in light of the record levels of expenditure and declining bus availability, do you think that the board would have been in a better position to, at the time, procure new units, considering the substantial sums spent on maintenance?
If you do a cost-benefit analysis, honorable member, yes, you can say that. But the major consideration would be the cash flow and the availability of funds at the time. So I think that would have precluded and more or less be the reason why the buses weren't available. On the matter of the level, though, of expenditure for bus maintenance, I want you to know in that the board, in its submission to the cabinet through our minister, we have suggested various ways how we would look at reducing our maintenance, and included in that we have met with a number of our current service providers, and we are looking to reduce the contract and arrangements by some 33 1/3%. That's one of the measures we're doing. We've also met with Simpson Motors, and we have identified those parts that we have identified a certain number of buses, approximately 160, that we are going to pay special attention to, which can be repaired in the short term. And we are going to do that with the hope that we can have between 100 and 130 operational at any one time. So we have engaged Simpson Motors. We have identified those parts that we often use, and we've asked them to bring them in for us at a special discount rate as well. So to answer your question, we are putting steps in place to reduce our maintenance.
I'm entitled to a third substitute question. I don't know, Madam Chair, if that is correct.
You're entitled to one question and two supplementaries.
So have I excluded my period of time?
Yes, you
okay,
have.
thank you.
You're quite welcome. Honorable member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask a question based on sub-program 0523, licensing inspection of vehicles. Now, I am prefacing the question with what another honorable member might say is information that sometimes you hear at the top of Broad Street or in the middle of Swan Street. There is the rumor that there may be infelicities at the Barbados Licensing Authority. People getting permits without going, getting inspections done without going, that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not sure what corruption is. I don't have my dictionary in front of me. But the people of Barbados are tired of these kinds of rumors and the perception of things that are happening that they feel should not be happening. And they responded quite eloquently, I would say, last May. Now, given that this government is intent on stamping out those bad practices, that would extend not just to those of us who are considered members of the political class, but also those who are in the service of the public generally. I see in this program significant sums to do with computer software and professional services, And my question has to do with, and I'm making an assumption, so I want to be clear, I'm not hiding anything. I'm making an assumption to preface the question. The assumption is that what I've heard in Swan Street and on Broad Street is correct, that there are shady things happening. I don't know how widespread. My question is that if there is that suspicion, is there anything in this expenditure for computer software and professional services that is intended to minimize the possibilities of persons making money by doing illegal things? Is there any intention in this provision to upgrade computer systems or to put in place mechanisms that would reduce the possibility of people misappropriating funds or taking money for licenses or inspections when those inspections haven't been done?
Okay, thank you very much, Minister. It's a very vexing topic. First, let me say that, as was reported in the press, we had a situation where some of our employees were siphoning off diesel and selling it to people from one of our trucks, and it was caught. Those people two have been interdicted, and one person actually pled guilty and will be sentenced in March, I believe that is. Following on from that, we made a decision that we will be putting on GPS locators on all of our vehicles, and we will have special systems on our diesel tanks as well. And we continue to have problems in the ministry with things of the nature that you are suggesting. In fact, we have had problems with people somehow getting into locked depots and stealing whole bobcats, as was alluded to by the member for St. Thomas. So we are aware that we have difficulties with respect to theft, be it of diesel or even of equipment, and we are putting systems in place. However, the part that you're referring to has to do with more electronic vehicle registration and what we call radio frequency identification technology. I'm not going to go too much into it. It is a security matter, but needless to say that will be coming online very, very shortly as well. But I've asked Mr. Virgil Knight, our Chief Licensing Officer, to come and address some of those issues that we have. We have another big problem, which is people are taking engines out of one vehicle, somehow rubbing off the registration number and then putting it into another vehicle, and that's a big scandal as well that we've now highlighted, and it is a police matter. But I'll ask Mr. Virgil Knight to do with it. There are lots of things like that we are also having to come to grips with, as well as all the other things of the ministry. But I'll ask Mr. Knight.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members. Okay, in relation to the comments made by the minister, we at licensing are forced to deal with new things on a daily basis. First, it was the chassis numbers being body fill and rating. Now it is chassis numbers being removed and replaced with others, and skillfully done. Staff at the organization is learning about these things on the job, basically. Because every time we find a method, or we're able to identify a method, the culprits are stepping up their game and getting past us. But that is one thing. In relation to other areas of infidelities, all I would say is that the organization, through the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Transport and Works and Maintenance, we're working assiduously to stamp out all wrongdoings. We take all complaints seriously. We do our investigations, and we will do whatever is necessary to eliminate this, this practice, thank you, at the organization.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
You want to mention that? Oh, the minister, before the Minister Phillips also wants to add one part as well.
In response to the Honourable Member for St. Peter's question, it has also been drawn to our attention, and it is now a police matter, where fake letters authorizing or informing persons of approvals with regards to taxi permits and so on were discovered, where persons lifted the signatures of the chairman of the Transport Authority, and letters were produced. It's a matter, as I said, the police is dealing with. No, we cannot go into a lot of, we got to go into basically any detail, as this would perhaps prejudice the investigation that is ongoing, but we are aware of such, and that is being addressed as well.
Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a problem in Barbados that appears to go unnoticed for a long time where our road networks are concerned. For instance, I can call to mind a couple of places within St. Philip that are basically almost one-way in. For instance, Breezy Hill, Cottageville, and if, ma'am, on your behalf, I can talk, Fortescue and Collie Savannah. They're one access in. If there was ever a problem and you needed to evacuate people, it will be mass casualties on our hands. And I'm sure that this is not only relegated to these particular areas, but this can be found in many areas across the country. Now, I heard Mr. Cummings speak about the roads that people use for hiking and stuff like that. But we also have, for a long time, a number of cart roads that are just there that people like myself will run through from time to time. People will ride bicycles or whatever. Is there, in your estimation, any merit in being able to look at these cart roads to see if we can use them as access roads to get us onto the highways, to make sure that if there are incidences, things like ambulances and fire trucks and other things can get into some of these areas? And if not, what would you suggest are alternatives?
Okay. Thank you, Minister, for the question. We recognize that link roads, I know that Cart Road might not be the exact one, but certainly link roads play a very, very important part, the ones that are, and once they're maintained well. With respect to bringing up a cart road to the level that it can be traversed by heavy vehicular traffic, that is not something we contemplate at this time, simply because of the cost that would be involved. But I do take the point that you have districts that are essentially large cul-de-sacs, that if there was a problem, then you would have difficulty getting out of them. And it's something that has more to do with how our history and how roads have designed and developed over time. And it's something that we'd have to study. It's not something that I am aware of that the ministry had contemplated. But I have a very competent PS who used to be the chief town planner. And as such, he may have had some experience in that, and I will hand over to the PS to give his views on that as relates to those roads being difficult from access point of view.
Thank you, Minister. In response to the Honorable Member, the Minister, Minister King, the point is well taken, and I think it is more a subdivision. It's more subdivision design challenge, and going forward, it is something that the planning authority should look at to ensure that there is not that one way in. And I mean, you've mentioned the ones in St. Philip. You have them in other parishes also, but certainly Fortescue, Halton, Breezy Hill, where you have in excess of 100 lots. It means that when the design is being contemplated, there's definitely need for an in, and also the means of egress, which is different from the ingress. And the only other thing I can add to that is, if there is going to be development adjoining those areas, then there's probably need to see how best a link can be a link can be created to also provide access in those areas. But while I've just said that, another challenge that that we are faced with is, earlier my colleague Mr. Tudor indicated that we have approximately 1,570 kilometers of roads in Barbados, and we also have approximately 120,000 vehicles. We have some motorists who thrive in driving through residential areas, sometimes at great speeds. I think the ministry calls it rat running. Other Barbadians call them shortcuts. And in trying to dissuade and discourage persons from doing that, we may have created another challenge. We may have created another challenge for ourselves, because as soon as the average Barbadian motorist thinks that traffic is not moving at the speed that he or she likes, then they start winding their way through residential areas, sometimes driving at 50, 60, 70 kilometers. And then the ministry is called upon for traffic calming devices. The quickest thing that callers ask for is a traffic hump, but the other traffic calming devices. So I think outside of the design, there's also need for public education and public awareness. But I do accept the challenge, and I think it is something that we seriously have to look at, because while we've been fortunate so far in that we've not had any major disasters, it is definitely something that can happen and that we need to plan for in the future.
Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Blessed good afternoon to both ministers and your team. My three questions. First, the Deacon's Road bus service was one that was conceived under the Barbados Labour Party. And for the last 10 years, that service has diminished. And one of the things I would like to know is how possible it would be to have that service rebirth to benefit the commuters within the St. Michael Northwest area and the outskirts, and also if that service can be extended to accommodate the commuters in Pearl Bay and Brighton Beach Road. That is the first question. Secondly, drainage remain. Pardon?
Bear in mind, we have a problem with bus availability, and that will be obviously the biggest problem. But hopefully once we get the bus availability back up to where we hope to have it, we'll be able to service those routes better. Okay. But I don't know if Ms. Sue wanted to add to that as well. Okay, fine.
Okay, thank you. The second question, drainage remain a major problem.
Just to add also, the transport augmentation program will also help with that as well, which is bringing some B buses to help us with the roads.
Okay, thanks. Drainage remains a major problem for the residents in areas such as Brighton Beach Road, North, Smallland, Bridge Gap, Pearl Bay, Brandon's, Ashdean Village, Farm Road, Deacon's Farm. And I can honestly say that the last administration and the former representative for that constituency neglected these issues. And I want to say that the residents that live on Block 1, Deacon's Farm, continue to suffer every time they have bad weather and heavy downpours of rain, that this particular unit block always gets flooded out. And this is an issue too that I had brought to the attention of drainage, and I did a walkthrough with Peter Phillips at one point last year, And one of the major issues that we have in that area is the water course that connects from Wavell, which is adjacent, well, the border that both the Member of Parliament for St. Michael West Central and we both share. And that canal connects to Ashton Village, running along Solo, through Dickens Farm, down to Brighton. For years, that issue was existing under both governments, and no matter which representative was representing that constituency, that issue still remains the same. And I honestly think that is an issue that needs urgent attention. First, the canals need upgrading. And secondly, there are water wells that haven't been cleaned in years, and they can attest to that. And secondly, we need additional wells in strategic locations to help capture some of this rainwater, because I don't think that it is fair for residents, having to endure such issues for so long, and it also inconveniences families whenever their homes are flooded out because of these issues that the former representative refused to address, right? The issue also with potholes that.
So the drainage question, then we get to the third one. Okay. First, but for, I guess, a little elucidation, the Peter Phillips that you'd have had the watch with is not this Peter Phillips sitting to my right, but the Peter Phillips who works at the drainage division. But I'm gonna hand over to Mr. Bowen to address your drainage issue.
Specifically, there are a number of wells in the area that we also know require some maintenance. We have been intensifying our inspections in that area because, as I said, we found a number of wells which required maintenance. I think we got a number of calls about some wells, including from yourself as well, with respect to some wells requiring maintenance and cleaning. So we have, one, intensified our inspections, and two, we are putting together, well, we've started cleaning a number of wells, I should first say that, and as well. But we will endeavor to try to clean as many as possible over this new financial period coming. The Ashdean Village, the watercourse with which you've spoken about, I did visit the area a few weeks back. We walked from the area through Ashton Village, all through the back by Solo and stuff. And the current drain it needs to be regraded, but it's going to be a very difficult one to deal with because a number of I was trying to look for a better word than paling, but using the Barbadian term, palings. People have shifted the course itself, put in 90-degree bends and all that into the drain, into the water course itself. So that will cause significant trouble where water will jump and start to flow over the terrain, right? So it will require significant work to regrade that drain.
All right, thank you very much. But honestly, despite the palings interfering with the course, I think that being a government in power, we should be able to reach out to these landlords and have the issue rectified. Secondly, the potholes under the last government was a nightmare. Unfortunately, a former member of the last government said that potholes save lives, but honestly, I need some attention paid to areas like Deacons Road, Barker's Gap, Pearl Bay, Tenantry Rose, and Free Hill, and also Brighton Terrace. These are areas too that were neglected under the last government and by the former representative for that constituency. And I can honestly say, Minister, or both ministers, that I am not here to ask or beg for any handouts or any flat screen TVs, but all I want from you all is to address these issues that continue to affect the lives of the residents and the good people of St. Michael Northwest.
Honorable Member for St. Michael Northwest, we take your point and your urgings, and it is the intention, as we have, we will reiterate, it is the intention of this ministry to bring relief to persons not only in your constituency, but all across Barbados. It is a huge task, and we are working on it every single day, and we will be aggressively pursuing situations like these, because Barbadians, we acknowledge and we know deserve better, and we will be pursuing this. We want you to, and all honorable members, to continue to if you think that we are slacking, certainly we're not. The ministry has been working hard, but continue to urge us, continue to highlight the areas so that they ever remain with us, and we will, as the saying will go, we will knock them off one by one, community by community, because we intend to bring relief to Barbadians.
Thank you very much.
This concludes this morning's session. We will continue after lunch.
To move that you do now report progress to His Honor the Speaker and ask for leave to sit again.
Question is that I report progress to the Honorable Speaker and ask him for leave to sit again. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported progress and humbly requests leave to sit again. Honorable City Bresson. Honorable City Bresson.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the sitting be suspended for lunch until 2:15 p.m.
The question is that this honorable chairman be suspended for lunch until 2:15 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This honorable chamber is so suspended until 2:15 p.m.